Hi everyone, it's Helen from SMB Deal Hunter. Today we have Shawn Allard with us, an acquisition entrepreneur who acquired an ice cream company in 2023. Very excited to hear Shawn's story. Shawn, great to have you here today.
Appreciate the opportunity. It's good to hear from you.
Yeah. Well, Shawn, look, let's dive right into it. What's your background? How did you get into, ETA and, acquiring businesses?
Yeah, so I was in consulting for about 4 years out of college. Decided to change pace. Wanted to either came to a crossroads. Wanted to either start my own thing. The route was to start my own thing. Then came across the ETA space and started searching for something in February, March of 23. And then as of August of last year, I finally closed on the business I started doing due diligence on about 3 months after starting my search. And then I have been working to expand that brand. We bought 2 locations. It is not a franchise, single owner took the whole company over. And like I said, just expanding that company now. Left my consulting gig in November of 23. So it's been about 4 months now that I'm officially full time on this project. And now kind of got the food and beverage, like brick and mortar bug, or restaurant, maybe hospitality is a better word for it, hospitality bug, and now trying to jump into different concepts. We're opening a coffee spot here in the next month or so, right next door to actually one of our ice cream spots. So should be exciting.
That's really cool. Congrats on closing that deal. I'm curious, going back to when you first started your search, where were you looking? What deals were you looking at? And how did you ultimately decide upon, an ice cream shop?
Yeah, so I was pretty agnostic from the very get-go. I really nailed my search down from a purchase price perspective. So I knew I wanted to buy something between 1 and 2 million. That's what I could afford personally without bringing on investors, equity partners, raising capital, anything like that. So was really kind of honing in on that $1 to $2 million price point, and was agnostic from a location standpoint, industry, everything like that. So the business itself, as far as why I chose it, a few different things. I was actually avoiding the brick and mortar restaurant, food and beverage space for the most part. It wasn't something I was super interested in. You hear a ton of horror stories about that, and so decided to entertain it once a broker presented it to me. After we were reviewing a few deals that weren't coming to fruition, this came across his desk. The numbers started to make a little bit more sense after some further review. The brand was very established in Arizona, which was enticing to me. It wasn't just another restaurant, it wasn't just another mom and pop spot. He had really established a fan base, a community, a culture here in Arizona, and I felt like I could really take that to the next level just with a little bit more energy. The owner was not old by any means and wasn't checked out. Just wanted to move on to different things, different projects. So yeah, I just felt like the brand just needed kind of a kick in the butt to like get to the next level, and I thought I could be the person to do that. Numbers made a lot of sense, ton of traction, ton of cash flow to actually get this to the next level. Brand was there, and then just from like an educational standpoint, I think it's a good intro into the food and beverage space for me. After I dove into this space during due diligence, I got more excited about hospitality as a whole. And so I thought this would be a good way to like kind of dip my toes in hospitality without going full scale restaurant on the first try. And so went down that now that we're going down this route, that world has opened up to me. And I think I've understood the world of food and beverage a lot more just through the last 6 months of working on just a couple of shops. So like I said, a few different reasons why, but I think ultimately the brand and the opportunity to scale was the two pieces that I felt most attached to.
And how long into your search did you, find this deal? What else did you look at that you passed on?
Yeah.
Yeah, what did that look like?
Well, it took about 3 months from initial search to beginning or to submitting the LOI. I was really looking at everything, and I mean like manufacturing to landscaping, home services. I mean, literally everything in between. And I started honing in on some of those home services businesses just because, what you hear out there is that that's what you should do. And I was very new to this space, so I was sort of following the guidance of some of the experts, and really just focusing my attention on the businesses that seem to have a moat around them and to just have um, this generational like pull. And so, yeah, like I said, looked at everything except food and beverage. And then search took about 3 months. Once I submitted two LOIs, one on a landscaping company, and then for some reason I forget the second one. But the landscaping company fell through. Me and another buyer, a strategic actually, were reviewing that one. This is a smaller deal, maybe I think it was 1.25. And so decent sized business ended up not going through on that one. And then this novel got presented to me, I think, about a month and a half later.
Got it. And how'd you finance the business or the deal?
Yeah, so went full SBA, did 90% SBA on this one. Did 10% down. The purchase price on this was about 1.2. And so did about 105, 110 grand down. Went traditional SBA. I got connected with a couple of SBA lenders. They liked the deal. The process was fairly straightforward as well. There weren't a ton of parties involved. Our finances were pretty clean on our end. And then as far as who I was working with, they made it fairly simple as well. So knowing what I know now, I think I would have structured it a little differently. Brought some seller carry, just a variety of different ways I could have structured it to not leverage 90% SBA. So yeah, just a traditional
Yeah.
SBA. Yeah.
No, that's great that you kind of had a pretty straightforward experience with going SBA. I'm sure a lot of people, are curious. People hear a lot about SBA loans, but it's rare that actually, people hear you know, experiences directly from someone who's, actually gone and gotten a loan themselves. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Curious. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to mention on the SBA side, I think that the biggest challenge is just the timeline on things and how slow the process is. And so if you just sort of take the lead on the project itself and just become the like sort of micromanage everybody process, it's not as arduous and tedious as it seems from the get-go. Like, yeah, it's documents on top of documents, but if you treat it as an internal like corporate project or something where there's timelines and checkpoints and things like that, it's not as bad as it seems. So as long as you're on top of it and you're the one sort of checking in with everybody consistently and just getting things on time, like the process is fairly straightforward. It's just when you sort of drag things along, and obviously people are busy outside of this process, right? They're working on other deals. You may still have your 9 to 5 or whatever else you're working on, and so just being very diligent with things is going to move it quickly. So I was just on top of it every day, just document here, document there, making sure everybody was in the loop on what was going on.
Got it. No, that's super helpful advice. You mentioned you were still sort of working your job at the same time. What did that look like? The time commitment that you were putting into your search versus, what you were doing with your 9 to 5.
Yeah, so truthfully, I treated this search as a second full-time job. Honestly, like before and after work, that's all I was doing. I pretty much dedicated most of my time to that. I was talking with brokers almost every day. I was reviewing multiple deals every day. And so I truly just treated it as I did any other job. And then, excuse me, I started leaning down on my 9 to 5 as I got closer to closing. And so from August, so I closed in August, from August to November, I really transitioned my focus to novel and just slowly like cut down what I was working on. And then like I said, as of November, we parted ways, but the from February, March-ish to August, it was definitely, say a 50, 60 hour a week, kind of journey, working both, just staying on top of the search process as well, so.
No, I love that. I feel like it's very much so a numbers game, and you have to be doing all the work in order to find deals and actually get something to close quickly. So
I think the reason I closed quickly is just because I was looking at so many deals. I was in conversations with every broker in Arizona. And you're just, the more reps you're getting, the more, the more deals you're getting in front of you, the more, even LOIs you're placing, like the chances of you finding a deal are much higher.
yeah, no, completely. Tell me more about, how you diligence an ice cream shop. I'm super, super curious.
Yeah, honestly, very straightforward. The restaurant, I should say the food and beverage space is usually a little confusing and cumbersome just from a P&L perspective, especially if we're doing full scale restaurants, but this is very straightforward, simple product line. There's not a whole lot going on in the back end. Only 2 locations, so very straightforward as far as breaking up revenue and COGS between both shops. The seller was honestly just a um, really detailed guy from start to finish. And so he really set us up for success during due diligence by having a lot of this stuff ready. And over the last 5 years of building this, he just, he was just very detailed on tracking and recording and bookkeeping and things of that nature. So made it a lot easier for us to do due diligence in that way. Him and I built a really good relationship from the very beginning. And so things were very transparent. Any questions I had, I could go directly to him. We would sit down in person and kind of go through things. We even started walking through his day and how to operate the shops during due diligence. And so, yeah, that was helpful. I didn't I didn't get smacked in the face post close. I got smacked in the face during due diligence. And sort of came to a crossroads on whether or not this was the right move. Which is good to have before close, right? And so, yeah, due diligence was also very straightforward. And now talking this out, I feel like I got really lucky, like from SBA to due diligence to the deal itself. Like things actually went very smooth for the most part. There's a lot of hiccups in the 6 months of operating it, but due diligence straightforward again. Financials were pretty concrete. Wasn't a whole lot to unpack. From what we do in the shops, there's just, you have your general metrics that you should be hitting in food and beverage and margins and things of that nature. And if that's what we're hitting, then that's what the numbers were showing, that we were happy. So yeah, due diligence was also very straightforward.
What are the metrics someone should look at, if they were also interested in buying an ice cream shop or a hospitality business like that?
Yeah, good question. As far as obviously you're looking at just general AUV, so how much volume you're doing per unit. It depends on the business itself, but from an ice cream shop, you're looking at, from metrics itself, I mean, your margins for ice cream should be ideally between 20 and 30%. Volume, it depends on the size, but from what we're doing, it's hard to say, but as far as margins are really what I'm looking for the most part. 20 to 30% is ideal for us, especially in any in dessert space. But with general restaurants, we're looking at 8 to 15% in that ballpark. So hopefully you're sitting there. Labor should be fairly low, hopefully for these concepts as well, for dessert concepts. But for general restaurants, you're looking at 50, 60%. For us, more like 30, 40. So it's really It fluctuates a lot from just quick service to general hospitality and restaurants, but yeah, so margins are what I'm looking for the most part per unit. We're sitting around 20 to 30%, which is great.
No, that's great. Thanks for sharing that. What did it, I guess, what did the transition look like once you actually took over? Did you quit your job immediately after that? Were you still kind of working and then transitioning part-time? What was it like working with the seller during that period?
Yeah, so closed in August and I was still working until November. And
Oh,
so
wow.
in November I was doing both. Like I said, I leaned down what I was doing on the corporate side for that period. So wasn't as crazy as it may sound. And then the transition itself, we were spending a lot of time together from August, or I had him for about 30 days. So from August to September, pretty much meeting on a daily basis, walking through inventory, shop layout, back end ordering, just really everything from start to finish. We walked through, we got things done in about 2 weeks. I kind of rebuilt the whole back end of the company in that time while we were walking through everything. So sort of like rebuilding it live. So a lot of what he was doing was fairly manual. And so that helps having him there with me to really just sit down and evaluate exactly what it looked like to operate this thing. And so transition, like I said, took about 30 days, or took about 2 weeks. I had him for 30 days. He was sort of on call for the latter 2 weeks of that. And then I think the most interesting piece that I realized is that owners who have been doing business or have been in that business for quite some time typically don't recall how many hours they are actually working. Remember like what they're working on. And so what seems like 10 hours a week to them is like actually 30, 35, something like that, right? Where so like, oh, I didn't even realize I was doing this and that. It just like I've been doing it for so long that it's just part of my day or my life. And so I think I just uncovered so much more than I would have realized or that I could have realized, not being in this space prior. So, yeah, the wake up call in the first 2 weeks was, oh, he is definitely doing a lot more than I expected. It wasn't an intentional like part on his end to not disclose that. It was just, he's been doing it for so long. So yeah, I uncovered a lot more, which was helpful again to walk through it with him so I could sort of streamline all of those processes, actually bring it down to the hourly that I was expecting to be at from the get-go. So yeah, and then the transition, the latter end of the transition was smooth, just some hiccups here and there, these with transfers of accounts and things like that. But the staff was on board with it for the most part. We had some hiccups, lost a couple people in that first 30 days.
Wow.
Just kind of shock to the system. But other than that, fairly straightforward. Again, we kind of started the process before close anyway. So about 2 or 3 weeks prior to close, we started like really hatching things out because we knew we were going to close. And so, yeah, got ahead of the game.
It's nice that you were able to sort of get a taste for the business before closing. That's great.
Yeah, the broker and the seller were very connected through the whole process. And so we would meet pretty regularly. We'd go through, the day-to-day of things,
What's
about, so.
what's your day-to-day like now? And you've sort of gone through that initial transition period. It's been a couple months. Well, what's your role look like now?
Yeah, a lot of it is general team management. So kind of overseeing our two shop managers, making sure that things are smooth on that front. So making sure people are happy, building culture, still being very present in the shops, not out of necessity, but out of want to continue to build a strong culture. We have really good people, which I'm lucky to have. And so I want to continue to foster those relationships and make sure people are working in the environment that they want to be. And so a lot of it is people management, and then the other side is general expansion. So identifying new locations, and everything involved in that process from, site selection all the way to opening. I'm still hiring, training, um, building other offerings like catering and events, and we're building out a mobile setup. So more so on the expansion side than anything else. Working on a lot of flavor ideations, sort of back end stuff there, just to kind of expand on our product line. But as far as being in the shops, definitely not a need at this point. Happens once a month where things, things happen in the food service space where 7 people call out in one day for whatever reason, and so it's like, hey, who's next, right? So I'm sort of last line of defense.
And they're scooping.
Yeah, and so cool with that once a month. It's actually enjoyable to be in there and like see all the nuances that you don't get to see. And it helps me find ways to make the experience better for the customer and our team when I'm in there actually working on a shift, for example. So yeah, but at this point, a lot of just ideating on how to improve on the brand, customer experience. I'm doing a lot of social as well. So just building brand online, telling the story, building hype around what we do, things like that.
No, that's great that you were able to shift from sort of learning the business to growing the business so quickly. How long would you say it sort of took before you went from just like literally just figuring out how things work to, actively now expanding?
I would say it was sort of right away. I did both for a while. I think I tried to manage like my growth plans from due diligence. So as I was going through due diligence, I sort of outlined like what I wanted to do with the brand right off the bat, hopefully within the first year. And so I was sort of doing both in tandem, like learning the business, but also trying to find ways to open our third location. I was building the events and catering side of things, buying the equipment, things like that, just kind of like improving and building the brand while learning how to operate it. But it took about 2 months, 3 months maybe, before I was like, okay, I get this. I see exactly where this can go. All the cracks and holes are filled at this point, and we're moving along where the day-to-day operations don't necessarily need me to be in as much as they did in the beginning.
Got it. I guess I'm curious, you have a lot of initiatives already, in play. How much do you think, you'll be growing the business this year? Have you already seen some growth since you've joined or since you've taken over? Actually, or was the business already sort of growing before, or more so steady state?
Yeah, so the business has been growing about 25 to 30% year over year
Wow.
since they opened in 2017. So I really caught kind of the middle of the flywheel, I would say, and we're continuing to grow pretty rapidly. Right now, we're up about 25% from last month alone, and so we're growing quickly. And so my initiatives are sort of coming to life from what I put in place during due diligence. I'm also not maybe spending as much time as I should be on expansion. Given I feel like something will break if I continue to push as hard as I have in the first couple of months. So I'm slowing down to a certain extent. So we have 2 projects in the works right now. And I'm trying to add a number 3 and 4. And I'm at a point where I'm like, do I add 3 and 4, or do I wait for, or excuse me, 4 and 5, or do I wait for these next 2 projects to come to life? So yeah, trying to find the happy medium between like continuing to manage and build the strongest operational efficiency I can, and like just expanding as fast as I could. So, yeah, interesting place to be, or exciting place to be, but also from a cash perspective, how sustainable is this level of growth over the next, year or two, without bringing on, partners or raising capital and things like that. So, it kind of going through that mental journey right now.
No, that's super exciting. I mean, good problems to have, right?
Yeah.
I'm curious which initiatives have, been most impactful on growth for you guys just, since you've taken over.
I think the most apparent, or the highest ROI at this point has been doubling down on social and community engagement. Obviously, we're brick and mortar space, very locally driven industry, very community-like environment and brand that was built prior to me joining. So I'm really just doubling down on that stuff, and it's really starting to help, to say the least. So those two things, I would say, are the most impactful in the short term. And then doubling down on training and finding the right people. I'm spending a lot of time. I interview every single person, no matter who they are, all the way from a shop level to whoever we bring on the management team. And so really spending a lot of time making sure we have the right people on the team, we're building the right expectations within the shop from a customer experience and training perspective. So a lot of people management is what has seemed to grow in the external perception of the brand, if that makes any sense. And then, yeah, like I said, just doubling down on community engagement and social, and that has really helped us take off in the last couple of years as well. So,
Got it. No, that's great. I guess looking back on this whole acquisition process, anything you would have done differently? I mean, hindsight 2020 always. So curious to hear, especially for those that are now buying their first business and going into this.
yeah, good question. Don't buy food and beverage concepts. I'm just kidding. Yeah, don't get into hospitality. It's fun, it's exciting. It's tough because unless you are buying a very established brand in the space, you will be needed a lot more than you think. And again, there's not a whole lot that I would say I necessarily would change. I definitely don't regret the decision I made. Could I have bought an easier business between $1 million and $2 million? Definitely. And so I would say try to uncover as much as humanly possible during due diligence, and so you don't get slapped in the face after you close with any skeletons in the closet or kind of unearthed situations or tasks or things that happen in the business on a daily, weekly, monthly basis that you just will be completely unaware of. So just really actually do due diligence on a business when you're doing it, if you decide to go down this route. But you're never gonna find it all out, but just try to find as much as you can out. So you really feel like you're making the right decision. And it sounds like I'm saying I didn't, but I did make the right decision. I'm happy with this space, happy with the brand, happy with how things are going now. One tip is if you don't want to work, if you're not comfortable with working a shift in the food and beverage space, then don't get in this space. It's specific to what I'm working on. But in general, do your due diligence, try to uncover as much as possible, and be clear on your growth initiatives, like you were mentioning. Like, what are those growth initiatives that are working? Like, really be clear on what you can actually bring to the table, in this business? What can you do? What levers can you pull to grow this thing? Or are you just buying it because it cash flows and you'll make some cash? Um, there's nothing wrong with that, but definitely I'm looking at a business to grow it. I'm not looking to buy it to, for the most part, just to cash flow on it from a general perspective. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. I think clarifying sort of your goals and expectations is super important up front. I guess I'm curious, is buying a business everything you expected it to be, especially going from, working consulting as in, a W-2 role?
Yes, I would not change a thing. I am extremely thankful, happy I made the decision to jump into this space. There is, yeah, there's no other option at this point. Like I would, I can't believe I didn't do it 10 years ago. So I'm going to continue to go down this route. We're starting concepts, but I really do see a few more concepts on the acquisition front here pretty soon. And so, yeah, this is just, yeah, definitely everything I expected it to be, good and bad. And yeah, I would advise anybody who has the urge to get into this space to test it for yourself. You don't need to go, personally guarantee your life away. But you can get into this at a small level, test it out, see if you enjoy it, see if you have the energy for it, and just continue to grow from there. But yeah, this is definitely the right game for me.
I loved hearing that. I guess, and curious, what's next for you in terms of these acquisition concepts you've spoken about? You mentioned expanding and growing by opening up more locations. What's sort of the acquisition play here?
Yeah, so biggest focus is definitely just expanding novel. That's sort of the focus of the hospitality group that I'm working on building. Like I said, we're building the coffee space as well. So that will be a single shop for now, but hopefully a multi-unit concept in the future. And there will be some other general hospitality acquisitions, everything from event spaces to potentially hotels and venues and food and beverage, full scale restaurants, quick service, catering companies, really just the whole hospitality suite is what I'm identifying as the target acquisitions. And I think we'll split it sort of 50-50 right now. We'll start some of them and we'll acquire when it's necessary or it makes sense financially. Or it's a good add-on to, let's say, the coffee concept. We can, acquire space. So yeah, there's pros to both, but it's really just waiting until the right concept comes along to acquire. But I think I'm really gonna double down on the hospitality side of things.
Oh, that's great. I mean, you're just kind of I love that because the learnings just keep compounding, I'm sure. I guess, how are you thinking about financing these future transactions or future deals that you're hoping to close?
Yeah, I think in the next year, if you do acquire another concept in 24, I will definitely need to raise some capital for that. I'm okay bringing on some hospitality partners, guys or gals who have been in the space before or are currently in the space. But definitely will want to raise some capital. I'm using as much cash flow from Novel and the other concepts I'm working on to just expand those concepts themselves. So not taking any of that cash flow to acquire any other concepts right now. So when those opportunities come about, either partnering with somebody in that business, for example, or just raising the necessary capital for it.
And would you go SBA again, or what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I would go SBA. So I'm definitely not tapped out on the SBA side. I think they updated it now to, was it 5 million? So I only have 1.2 out of that 5. I could work with, either one huge concept or multiple in there. So I'll definitely tap the SBA out as quickly as I can if the opportunities are there. And then, from there I'll bring on partners and and investors as needed. So yeah, we'll do a mix of both for sure.
That's great. I know we're up at time soon, but any final words of wisdom, Shawn, especially for first-time buyers out there?
Yeah. Words of wisdom. Just make sure that you are willing and able to put everything you possibly can into whatever business you buy. It's going to be hard. It's going to take a lot of energy. Especially if it's not, even if it's the most established brand. If you're trying to do a lot to the business, if you're trying to grow it, it's going to take a lot more time than you think. You're probably going to work more than you were in your W-2. So transparently, buying a business and working 5 hours a week is very rare. I'll say that. So there are definitely cases that happens. But if you're buying anything under $5 million, I would say the chances of you working a lot are high. So just be okay with that. But yeah, be willing and able to spend a lot of time to nurture this over the next 5 to 10 years and do your due diligence.
No, that's great advice. Is it worth it though? The longer hours?
Definitely. I mean, you're building your own thing, right? I mean, everyone's probably heard this before, but if you're willing to work however many hours for somebody else, imagine how much more you could put in, or how much more effective you could be towards your own thing. So
I completely agree there. I guess, Shawn, if people want to reach out after, listening to your story, where can they find you? Where can they reach out to you?
yeah, I would say Twitter is the best place. Shawn W. Allard on Twitter. That's where I'm the most active. Just love the community there. It's where I learned everything I needed to know about the acquisition space anyways. So it's where I live, and it's where the best community in this space lives, in my opinion. So that's where I'm at. And then LinkedIn and yeah, so mostly Twitter. So hit me up on Twitter. Happy to help, happy to give guidance where I can. And yeah, appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, well, thank you, Shawn, for joining me today. And I think, people are going to really love hearing your story. So thanks again.
Thank you. Glad to help.